3 years after the divorce, my ex-wife, the woman who'd torched our life for the one that got away, showed up on my doorstep. She was holding a 3-year-old boy and telling me he was mine. I had to laugh. Ding dong. The sudden chime of the doorbell sliced through the quiet of my apartment. I was sunk into the leather sofa, going over a project proposal, and the interruption was irritating. Who would be here at this hour? I padded over to the door in my slippers and peered through the peephole. Just one look, and my entire body went rigid. Standing in the hallway was Chloe, my ex-wife. It had been exactly 3 years since the divorce. 3 years in which she'd vanished from my life as if she'd never existed. Not one phone call, not a single text. Now, without any warning, here she was. She looked rough. The trench coat she wore was rumpled, and though her makeup was meticulously applied, it couldn't hide the bone-deep exhaustion in her eyes. This was a woman who, back then, wouldn't even take out the trash without being dressed in designer clothes. But the real shock was the little boy in her arms. He looked to be about 2 or 3, with a sturdy build and wide, curious eyes that darted around, taking in the details of my front door. And I couldn't shake the feeling, maybe it was a trick of the light, that the set of his brow, the shape of his eyes, bore an uncanny resemblance to my own. My heart gave a hard, painful thud. Before my brain could catch up, my hand was already turning the lock, opening the door. Leo. The moment she saw me, her eyes welled up, her voice cracking. The picture of fragile remorse she presented was a universe away from the woman who had dragged her suitcase out that door 3 years ago without a single backward glance. I said nothing. My gaze shifted from her to the child in her arms. Can we come in? She asked, sniffing, her voice small and careful. I stepped aside and let her pass. The second she was inside, she set the boy down. He wasn't shy at all. His little legs carried him on a wobbly tour of my spacious living room, happy little gurgles escaping his lips. Chloe, however, hovered awkwardly by the door, wringing her hands, unsure of what to do with them. Leo, I made a mistake, she finally said, tears spilling down her cheeks like broken pearls. These last few years, they've been awful. Julian Vance, he's a monster. He took my money and ran, just left me with nothing. I finally realized that you were the only one who ever truly cared about me. Julian Vance. Her golden boy, the one that got away. The name landed with a dull thud in my memory, stirring nothing but a faint, bitter amusement. It was for him that she had thrown us away. As she stood there, crying her carefully constructed tears, my mind replayed the highlight reel of our spectacular implosion. Back then, I was just Leo Miller, a kid from the wrong side of the tracks with nothing to my name but ambition. When I met Chloe, she was the queen of our college campus, orbited by admirers. Everyone said I was punching way above my weight, but I refused to believe it. I poured everything I had into winning her over. After graduation, I worked like a man possessed. I clawed my way up from an entry-level associate, surviving on all-nighters and takeout, sacrificing my health until I finally landed a senior executive position. The very first bonus I earned went to a diamond necklace she'd admired in a magazine. 4-hour wedding. I threw a party that was the talk of the city, determined to give her the princess fantasy she'd always wanted. She loved designer bags, so I had the latest models delivered to her every season. She said she loved the ocean, so I bought a beachfront condo in Miami without a second thought. I thought if I gave her the world, she would stay. How naive. You can't fill a void in someone's heart, especially when that heart doesn't belong to you. The day Julian Vance moved back to the States, everything changed. He was her senior from college, the embodiment of her what if. I remember that day with perfect clarity. It was my 30th birthday. I booked a table at her favorite French restaurant, bought a massive bouquet of roses, and waited like an idiot from 7 p.m. until closing. She never showed. All I got was a cold, sterile text. Julian just got back in town, and he's having a hard time. I'm with him. I sat there alone in the empty restaurant, staring at the untouched birthday cake, and I laughed. Laughed until the tears came. Then there was the time I had an acute appendectomy and was rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night. Before the surgery, I was sweating through the sheets with pain. I called her, begging her to come. Her voice on the other end was clipped with annoyance. I'm at an art gallery opening with Julian. You're a grown man, Leo. It's a minor surgery. I'll come by later. But she never did. The surgery ended, the anesthesia wore off, and she was still a no-show. The next day, I was scrolling through Instagram from my hospital bed and saw her post. A 9-photo carousel of her and Julian, laughing, clinking glasses, posing in front of sculptures. The location tag was the Art Institute of Chicago. Her caption read, "Art is only meaningful when you share it with someone who understands." That was the moment my heart truly turned to ice. The final straw was discovering she had secretly transferred $100,000 to Julian's startup. It was our joint savings. When I confronted her, she flew into a rage. He's just going through a rough patch. You're so successful now. What's the big deal with helping him out? Leo, can't you be a little more generous? After all our years together, is our relationship worth less than $100,000? Our relationship? I had to laugh. Chloe, are we talking about my relationship with you? Or your relationship with him? She was speechless, which only fueled her anger. Fine. Yes, I'm still in love with him. So what? Can you even compare yourself to him? You're just a cheap suit stuffed with money. You don't get me. That was it. That was enough. I pulled out the divorce papers I'd drawn up weeks earlier. She signed them without even reading. As she walked out with her suitcase, she glanced back at me, her eyes filled with a potent mix of pity and contempt. Leo, you'll see. I'll be so much better off without you. The memory faded, and I looked at the sobbing woman in front of me. The irony was suffocating. Better off? This was her idea of better off? Leo, look, this is our son. Seeing my silence, Chloe grew anxious. She pulled the little boy, who was busy playing, and pushed him toward me. His name is Noah. Noah Miller. It's because I was always thinking of you. She knelt, her voice turning syrupy sweet. Noah, come on. Say hi to Daddy. The little boy blinked his big eyes, looked at me shyly, and in a tiny, milky voice, he said, Daddy. 3 years ago, that single word might have shattered my resolve. Now it just made my stomach turn. Seeing no change in my expression, Chloe scrambled to explain, thinking I didn't believe her. Leo, he's really your son. It was that night before the divorce. You were drunk, and we. Her face flushed, her words trailing off, but the implication was clear. She wanted me to believe this child was the product of one last drunken mistake. What a performance. Another man, seeing a child that looked a bit like him, hearing this tearful confession from his ex-wife, might have actually bought it. He might have played his part in some touching second-chance romance. Too bad she'd picked the wrong man. I stared at her, a slow smile spreading across my face. The smile was enough to stop her crying. She looked at me, a flicker of unease in her eyes. Leo, what are you smiling at? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned and picked up my phone from the coffee table. Right in front of her, I swiped the screen open, found a number in my contacts, and hit dial. The call connected almost instantly. Hello, you've reached the Advanced Genetics Center. How may I help you? I put the call on speaker. The pleasant, professional voice of the customer service rep echoed in the silent living room. Chloe's face, in an instant, went bone white. She stared at me in disbelief, her lips trembling. I spoke into the phone, my voice perfectly calm. Hello, I need to schedule an expedited paternity test. Yes, as soon as possible. I hung up. The living room was plunged into a dead, suffocating silence. The air felt thick, unbreathable. Chloe stood frozen, the color drained from her face, leaving behind only shock and humiliation. The little boy, Noah, seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. He stopped trying to grab the fruit on the table and retreated quietly into her arms. Leo, what? What do you mean by that? It took her a long moment to find her voice, and when she did, it was dry and raspy, like sandpaper. I tossed my phone back onto the sofa, poured myself a glass of water, and took a slow sip before meeting her gaze. It means nothing, I said coolly. It means exactly what it sounds like. You say the child is mine. I don't believe you. So, we'll use a scientific method to verify it. Simple, isn't it? You. Chloe swayed on her feet, as if I'd struck her. The tears returned, but this time they weren't fragile. They were full of rage and wounded pride. Leo, how could you do this to me? How could you doubt your own son? She shrieked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. His name is Noah. I named him that because I was thinking of you every single day. For 3 years, I raised him all by myself. Do you have any idea how hard that was? The things I've suffered? And why did I do it? For you. And this is how you repay me? You want to drag him to a DNA test? Do you have a conscience? She was losing it. Theatrics. I knew this playbook well. Whenever we argued, and she was losing ground, this was her go-to move. The tears, the accusations, the guilt trips, painting me as the cold, heartless villain. 9 times out of 10, I used to be the one to back down, to apologize, to pull her into my arms, no matter whose fault it was. But people change. Get your heart broken enough times, and you develop an immunity. I watched her histrionic performance with a detached sense of amusement. The woman had missed her calling. She should have gone to Hollywood. Are you finished? I asked calmly, waiting for her to run out of steam. My composure only seemed to infuriate her more. Leo, you bastard. You cold-blooded animal. She pointed a trembling finger at my face. Even a tiger won't eat its own cub. How could you humiliate your own son like this? He's only 3. Do you want to scar him for life? What kind of father are you? Father? I repeated the word, the smile on my lips widening. Whether I'm his father remains to be seen. But Chloe, are you fit to be a mother? My voice was low, but each word landed like a hammer blow. Her tirade stopped abruptly, as if someone had wrapped a hand around her throat. I stood up and walked toward her, towering over her by a good head. My eyes were ice. 3 years ago, who was it that walked out on her husband for another man without a moment's hesitation? Who was it that, while her husband was in the hospital recovering from surgery, was out sipping champagne with another man and posting about it on Instagram? And who was it that stole $100,000 from our joint account to bail out her precious one that got away, and then had the nerve to call me a sellout who didn't understand her? With every question, the color drained further from her face. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably, her eyes darting away, unable to meet my gaze. Now your golden boy has kicked you to the curb, and suddenly you remember me? You show up here with a child from God knows where, crying about how you regret everything, telling me he's mine. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper only she could hear. Chloe, what do you take me for? A dumping ground? My words left her utterly speechless. She couldn't refute a single point. It was all true, every last ugly detail. These were the nails she herself had hammered into the coffin of our marriage. The room fell silent again, until the little boy, likely frightened by my tone, puckered his lips and let out a piercing wail. The sound broke the tension. As if grabbing a lifeline, Chloe immediately scooped him up, murmuring reassurances while shooting me an accusing glare. See, you scared him. He's just a child. I stepped back and returned to the sofa, my calm mask slipping perfectly back into place. I didn't mean to scare him, I said, picking up the report I'd been reading. I was merely stating the facts. I paused, looking up at her, and delivered my final terms. I've already made the appointment at the genetic center. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll text you the address. Whether you show up is your decision. If you're telling the truth, and he is my son, I will absolutely fulfill my responsibilities as a father. Child support, tuition, you won't be shorted a single penny. I saw her eyes light up at the mention of money and had to suppress a sneer before delivering the final blow. However, I said, my tone hardening, getting back together is out of the question, and I will be fighting for sole custody of the child. The flicker of triumph in her eyes died instantly, replaced by sheer panic. What? What did you say? She stammered. You're going to take my son from me? Not take. I corrected her. I'm taking back what is mine. Assuming, of course, that he is mine. You wish, she screamed. Noah is my life. I will never give him to you. Never. That won't be up to you, I said, closing the report and leaning back, shutting my eyes. Chloe, you seem to have forgotten your current situation. For the past 3 years, you've been raising him alone. You have no stable job, no permanent address. Your entire life is being financed by the scraps of money left over after your boyfriend scammed you. I open my eyes, my gaze sharp as a razor. And me? I'm an executive director at a publicly traded company. I have an 8-figure salary, multiple properties, and the means to provide him with the best possible life and education. Tell me, who do you think a judge will side with? That speech was a bucket of ice water dumped over her head. All the fight went out of her. It was true. How could she fight me? She had nothing, and I had everything she'd ever dreamed of. She stood in the middle of my living room, clutching her child, trapped. Her expression shifted rapidly, a war raging behind her eyes. I didn't rush her. I knew she had no choice. Money was her weakness and her only goal. She saw my success, and with Julian gone, she was here to cash in. As long as there was a payout, she'd agree to anything. After a long 5 minutes, she collapsed onto the rug like a deflated balloon. Fine, she bit out, the words squeezed from between clenched teeth. I'll be there. With that, she scrambled to her feet, holding the child, and practically fled from my apartment. As the door clicked shut, the mask fell from my face. I walked to the window and watched her pathetic figure climb into a beat-up taxi and disappear down the street. A cold, hard smile touched my lips. The next morning at 9 a.m., I was standing outside the Advanced Genetics Center. Chloe was already there, holding Noah. She'd made an effort today, wearing a white sundress, her hair neatly styled, her makeup subtle. She was trying to project an image of pure, innocent fragility. Unfortunately, the dark circles under her eyes and the anxiety she couldn't hide gave her away. Noah was fussy, either from lack of sleep or the sterile environment. He wouldn't stop crying. Chloe held him, her face a mask of impatience, a stark contrast to the doting mother she'd pretended to be yesterday. Cry, cry, cry. That's all you ever do. It's so annoying, she muttered under her breath. When she saw me approaching, her expression shifted instantly. The puppy dog face was back, and she started patting Noah's back with exaggerated tenderness. Oh, say Noah, don't cry. Daddy's here, see? Daddy's here. I watched her seamless transition and sneered internally. Classic Chloe. Ignoring her, I went straight to the front desk to handle the paperwork. Chloe shadowed me like a warden, whispering a constant stream of complaints. Leo, do you have to be so cruel? Look at him, he's terrified. Everyone here is staring. What are they going to think of us? Of Noah? We were married. For God's sake. Can't you leave me with a shred of dignity? I tuned her out, focusing on the forms. Dignity? Where was my dignity when you left me alone on my birthday for Julian? Where was our marriage when you were using my money to fund his life? It was too late to talk about dignity. When it was time for the blood draw, Noah screamed bloody murder. The needle pierced his chubby little arm, and his face turned purple. Chloe stood by, wiping away fake tears and attacking me with her words. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? He's only 3 years old. How can you be so heartless? A few older women in the waiting room started giving me dirty looks and whispering among themselves. My goodness, what's wrong with that man? He looks so well-dressed, but he's so cruel to his own child. Young people these days. I didn't bother to explain. I just reached into my pocket, pulled out a lollipop, unwrapped it, and gently placed it in Noah's mouth. His cries immediately softened to whimpers. He looked up at me, his big eyes still swimming with tears, sucking on the candy. I stroked his head, my touch gentle. Regardless of who his father was, he was just a child. He was innocent in all of this. After the samples were taken, I left my contact information with the clinic, instructing them to call me the moment the results were in. I didn't say another word to Chloe. She seemed to realize that today, I was unreachable. None of her usual tactics would work. All she could do was stand there, glaring at me as I walked away. Over the next few days, my phone was under constant assault. Chloe had changed her strategy. The angry accusations were replaced with a calculated campaign of nostalgia. Leo, remember that little Italian place we went on our first date? They have a new prix menu. We should go try it sometime. I drove past our old apartment building today. The jasmine bush you planted by the front steps is in bloom. It smells amazing. Noah said, Daddy today, so clearly. He really misses you. Honey, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, just give me one more chance. That honey made my stomach clench. I read every single text, my face a mask of stone, and then deleted them all without replying. Her cheap apologies were worthless to me. On Friday afternoon, I left work early to meet Sophia at a coffee shop near my office. Sophia Hayes, my girlfriend. We'd met at a corporate gala. She was a partner at a top law firm, sharp, rational, and insightful. Being with her was effortless. I never had to guess at hidden meanings or orchestrate grand romantic gestures. We were two independent adults who respected and were drawn to each other. She was already there when I arrived, seated at a small table by the window. Dressed in a chic beige pantsuit, her long hair pulled back, she was engrossed in a legal document, the line of her profile soft in the afternoon light. Been waiting long? I asked, sliding into the chair opposite her. She looked up and smiled. It was a smile like warm sunlight, bright without being blinding. Nope, just got here. She closed the file and pushed it aside. So, how are things with the ex-wife situation? Any progress? I hadn't hidden anything from her. From the moment Chloe appeared on my doorstep, I had told Sophia everything. I'd expected her to be angry, jealous, or at the very least, wary. She was none of those things. She just listened calmly, helped me analyze the potential outcomes, and then said, don't be afraid. Do what you need to do. Whatever the result, if it comes to legal action, I'm here. In that moment, I knew the best decision I'd ever made wasn't grinding my way to a fortune, but divorcing Chloe, and in doing so, making room in my life for Sophia. The test is done. Just waiting for the results, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. She's been harassing me nonstop for days. That's to be expected, Sophia nodded knowingly. She's a drowning woman, and she'll grasp at any piece of driftwood she can find. In her eyes, you're the biggest log in the ocean. And what about you? I looked directly at her. If, and I'm just saying if, that kid really is mine, what will you do? This was the question that had been weighing on me. Sophia's gaze was serious and unwavering. Leo, we're adults. If he's your son, that's a biological fact that can't be changed. You have a duty to him, and I completely understand and support that. She paused, then reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. What I care about isn't whether you have a child. What I care about is whether you still have feelings for that woman. I fell for the man you are now. Mature, clear-headed, a man who knows what's worth holding on to. As for the past, everyone has one. As long as you handle it, and don't let it poison our present and our future, that's all that matters. Her words washed away the last of my anxieties. I turned my hand over and squeezed hers tightly, a gesture that said more than words ever could. Just then, a shrill voice cut through the cafe's mellow jazz like a shattered glass. Leo. I turned. Standing a few feet away, looking like a lioness ready to pounce, was Chloe. Her eyes were locked on our joined hands, burning with a furious fire. How'd she find me? Oh, right. She'd followed me. Some habits die hard. Before I could speak, she stormed over to our table and pointed a finger at Sophia's face. Well, Leo, now I get it. No wonder you've been so cold and heartless. You found yourself a new little tramp to warm your bed. With that, she raised her hand to slap Sophia. I moved in a flash, shooting to my feet and grabbing her wrist. Chloe, what the hell is wrong with you? My grip was iron, and she winced in pain. What's wrong with me? She shrieked, struggling against me. Leo, you cheating bastard. While I'm at home, struggling to raise your child, you're out here playing happy family with some other woman. How dare you? How dare you do this to me and to Noah? Her outburst silenced the entire cafe. All eyes turned to us. People started whispering, pointing. This was exactly what she wanted, a public scene to humiliate me. But she'd made a critical miscalculation. She wasn't just dealing with me. She was dealing with a lawyer 100 times calmer than I could ever be. Ma'am. Sophia, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. She rose to her feet, her expression perfectly composed. She held up her phone, the screen glowing with the telltale red bar of a voice recording in progress. First, I'd advise you to watch your language. The word tramp is highly defamatory and has already caused damage to my reputation. Second, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Sophia Hayes, and I am a practicing attorney. She watched Chloe's face freeze. To my knowledge, you and Mr. Miller finalized your divorce 3 years ago. My relationship with Mr. Miller began 6 months after he was legally and officially single. Our relationship is legal, ethical, and consensual. Your accusations of me being a homewrecker are baseless and constitute slander. Finally, Sophia's gaze drifted to Chloe's wrist, still trapped in my grasp. You just attempted to physically assault me. That action was not only recorded by my phone, but was also captured in its entirety by the cafe's security cameras. Under state law, I have every right to call the police right now and press charges. Her speech was a masterclass in controlled destruction, logical, precise, and utterly devastating. Chloe was floored. She had clearly never encountered anything like this. The dramatic, messy confrontation she had envisioned, the wronged wife tearing into the mistress, had just been turned into a free legal seminar. She stood there, mouth agape, unable to form a single word. The expressions on the faces of the onlookers shifted from disapproval of me to something akin to pitying amusement at Chloe. The humiliation was total. Chloe's face cycled through shades of red and white. Finally, she ripped her arm from my grasp, covered her face, and fled the cafe like a cornered animal. Watching her retreat, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sense of exhaustion. Sorry, I said, turning back to Sophia. You shouldn't have had to deal with that. Sophia shook her head, put her phone away, and sat back down. Don't be. She took a delicate sip of her coffee. It's just a shame she ran off so quickly. That was a textbook defamation case just waiting to be filed. I looked at her and couldn't help but smile. That was my Sophia, always calm, always in control, and with just a hint of a deliciously sharp edge. The results came 2 days later. A call from the lab. It was a 99.9% match. The child was mine. Holding the report, a few thin sheets of paper that fell as heavy as lead, I arranged to meet Chloe at the same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. She arrived radiating smug triumph, as if the mortifying scene at the coffee shop had never happened. The results are in, aren't they? She asked eagerly as she sat down, the self-satisfied gleam in her eyes impossible to miss. I said nothing, simply sliding the sealed envelope across the table. She snatched it, tore it open, and her eyes scanned the page until they landed on the conclusion. The analysis supports the conclusion that Leo Miller is the biological father of Noah Peterson. A wave of pure, unadulterated ecstasy washed over her face. She'd just been handed a royal flush. I told you. She slammed the report down on the table, her voice rising with victorious arrogance. Leo, what do you have to say for yourself now? Noah is your son. Your own flesh and blood. She leaned forward, her eyes pinning me down like a condemned prisoner awaiting her sentence. Now, I'm going to give you one chance. You're going to break up with that lawyer, Sophia, immediately. Then, you and I are going to City Hall to get remarried. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to give Noah a proper family. You owe me that, and you owe it to him. She leaned back, crossing her arms, smugly awaiting my surrender. In her mind, the child was her trump card, a golden ticket that gave her absolute power over me. I looked at her gloating face, and I didn't feel anger or panic. I just smiled. My smile wiped the arrogance right off her face. A flicker of doubt, then unease, crept into her eyes. What are you smiling about? She asked, her voice losing its edge. The report is right there. What tricks could you possibly have left to play? Tricks? I shook my head, calmly taking a sip of water. Chloe, do you really think this piece of paper means you've won? Doesn't it? She shot back, her bravado already failing her. Of course not. I set the glass down, leaned forward, and locked my eyes on hers. The boy is mine. That much is true. The report is scientific, and I accept it completely. But I drew the word out, watching with satisfaction as the last bit of color drained from her cheeks. From my briefcase, I pulled out another document, this one much thicker than the DNA report. I dropped on the table in front of her with a sharp thud. Since your memory seems to be failing you, allow me to help you refresh it. Chloe flinched. With a trembling hand, she reached for the file. When she saw the title on the first page, her pupils contracted to pinpricks. Printed in bold, black letters were the words, Patient Records, Northwestern Memorial Hospital Fertility and Reproductive Medicine Center. Patient name, Chloe Peterson. Date of visit, 4 years ago July, 10 months before our divorce. Chloe's face turned the color of ash. The file shook in her hand, the papers rattling like dry leaves in a storm. What is this? She stammered. I've never seen this before. Never seen it. I let out a cold laugh. Chloe, are you really going to keep this act up until the bitter end? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms, feeling like a judge about to deliver a final verdict. 4 years ago, Julian Vance came back to town. You two rekindled your old flame. Couldn't keep your hands off each other. You were ready to start a new life with him, weren't you? But then you found a problem. Your perfect man, Mr. Sophistication himself, was defective. He was sterile. The word sterile made her jolt as if she'd been shocked. You wanted to marry into his wealthy family, secure your position with a child, but the heir apparent was shooting blanks. What's a girl to do? So, you came up with a brilliant plan. I tapped the medical file on the table. Under the guise of getting ready to start a family, you convinced me to go with you for a comprehensive health screening. Then, you bribed a nurse to steal my semen sample. After that, you took my sample to the fertility clinic and had yourself artificially inseminated. You thought your plan was flawless. Get pregnant, divorce me immediately, then show up on Julian's doorstep with his son, securing your future. That way, you get the man you wanted, and you get to use my child to lock him down and inherit his family's fortune. Am I right, Chloe? My voice was quiet, but every word was a sledgehammer, smashing her pathetic defenses to pieces. She shattered. No, that's not true. You're lying. You're making it all up. She screamed hysterically, grabbing the file and tearing it to shreds, as if destroying the paper would erase the past. Where's your proof? You have no proof. This is all fake. Fake. I laughed as if it were the funniest joke I'd ever heard. Chloe, have you forgotten what my girlfriend does for a living? Sophia obtained these records through a court-ordered subpoena, directly from the hospital's archives. They have your signature, the doctor's stamp, and the hospital's official seal. Do you really think I could forge that? As for the nurse you bribed, Sophia found her, too. She gave a sworn, recorded statement detailing exactly how you threatened and paid her to swap the samples. I took out my phone and played the audio file. A timid, nervous voice filled the air. It was Ms. Peterson who approached me. She said her husband had performance issues but was too proud to come to the clinic. She gave me $50,000 in cash to procure a sample from Mr. Miller during his physical. Every word from the recording was another slap across Chloe's face. Her screaming stopped. All the energy drained out of her, and she slumped in her chair, a ghost of a woman. It was over. Her darkest, most depraved secret was laid bare for the world to see. When did you find out? She whispered, her eyes hollow as she looked at me. When? I smiled. I knew the moment you showed up at my door with that child. The truth is, I'd been suspicious for a long time. In the months before our divorce, you were suddenly so affectionate, so insistent. Now I know it was all just to get me to go along with your little health screening. And Julian's infertility? I found that out by chance. You thought you kept it a secret, But a secret like that never stays buried for long. So when you came back, spinning that tale about Noah's name and our one drunken night, it was laughable. The only reason I played along, the only reason I agreed to the DNA test, was for this moment. I stood up, adjusting the collar of my suit, and looked down at her, my gaze devoid of any warmth. You schemed and plotted, Chloe. You thought you had me wrapped around your finger. But you made one fatal miscalculation. You forgot that the Leo Miller of today is not the same fool you walked all over 3 years ago. With that, I reached into my briefcase and pulled out one last document. A court summons. I placed it gently on the pile of shredded paper. This is from Sophia. Illegal acquisition of human genetic material, marital fraud, extortion. Oh, and let's not forget the slander and attempted assault at the coffee shop. All told, it should be enough to put you away for a few years. As for Noah, I looked at her face, now twisted with terror, and delivered the final, crushing blow. He is my son. He has nothing to do with you anymore. I will give him the best life possible. And I will tell him that he had a birth mother who, for the sake of money, would stop at nothing, and in the end, destroyed herself. No. A horrifying shriek tore from her throat. She lunged across the table, trying to snatch the summons, but I sidestepped her easily. She crashed to the floor, her hair a mess, her makeup ruined, looking like a madwoman as she sobbed and cursed. The restaurant security guards were there in moments, hauling her to her feet and dragging her out. I stood by the window and watched as the woman I once loved more than life itself, the woman I had grown to despise, was carted away like a piece of trash. A 3-year charade had finally come to an end. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sophia. Everything go okay? I smiled and typed back. Perfectly. What do you want for dinner? I'm cooking. I'm craving your bolognese. Done. I put my phone away and walked out of the restaurant. The sun was bright. The air was warm. I tilted my head back, closed my eyes, and felt its heat on my face for the first time in a long time. My life, I knew, was turning a new page today. A chapter with no Chloe, only sunshine, the woman I loved, and a son I would spend the rest of my life protecting. As for Chloe's fate, I heard later that, with the multiple charges, she was sentenced to 5 years. The scandal also ruined Julian Vance. His company went bankrupt, and he became a laughingstock. With Sophia's help, I was granted sole and permanent custody of Noah. We changed his name to Noah Hayes Miller. Hayes, for the woman who would be his real mother. I wanted him to forget the past and, like her, live his life in the sun. Our family of 3 is happy. Sometimes when I drive past the high walls of the state penitentiary with Noah, I'll point to it. I'll tell him that a person who made very bad choices lives in there. I'll tell him to never, ever be like her. Because not every I'm sorry is answered with an it's okay. Some mistakes, once made, last a lifetime.